Okay, it's December 3rd. It's 8:36 in the morning. It's a nice day. It's a little foggy. We got some chemtrails early. It's frozen on the beach. It's like 36 degrees up here. Heading into town on a quick run to do some chores and pick up some supplies. I've got a lot of activity today. I've got some hardware coming in. I'm going to try and fix my drive array. I actually think it's the controller and not the individual drives, which is kind of a pain in the butt. This controller is so old, I'll have to buy a replacement unit with new software and, new arrangements and all of that. I'll have to integrate the existing drives into it, that sort of a deal. So, pain in the butt, right? Anyway, so December 3rd, we're into the period of time that's going to lead us up into the melee. We've got plenty of existing real-world examples of those forces in operation now, because we've got, all the fighting and scrapping and shit here in the U.S. And everybody's always, there's minute-by-minute activity between the dying deep state, the Wokonians, who are the victims of the dying deep state but don't understand that, and the awake people and the MAGA people, the normies that are sort of starting to wake up a bit, right? And so there's all kinds of fighting and problems and irritations with them. And then we've also got the Mother Weffers, the Elohim worship cult in Europe, trying to stage a color revolution in Georgia, because Georgia is going to ally with Russia and they don't want to be any part of NATO. NATO's busting apart. NATO was to be the global army that the WEF would control. And so we were to be fighting NATO troops here in the U.S. and UN troops under the blue helmet deal. I don't know that that's going to happen now. That was the Mother Weffers' plan. It never showed up in my data that way. The closest we come to that is in the data. It showed an expedition leaving from, the middle of the country here, maybe Great Lakes region, right? Going to Canada to liberate Canada from foreign occupation. And those guys fought blue helmet UN troops that basically just fled. Okay, it was sort of a really sort of a non-contention invasion, in the sense that the opposition just faded before the invading American troops that were liberating Canada. Anyway, so all kinds of stuff going on today. We've got the color revolution there in Georgia. We've got South Korea this morning declared martial law. They've got the same problems as the duly elected representatives, government in Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, not the state of. I should have made that clear earlier. Yeah, the Republic, Eastern Europe, Anyway, so the Mother Weffers are trying to do a color revolution there, and they're trying to do the color revolution in South Korea. And so the color revolution is basically the NGOs get a bunch of people agitated and turn them against the government for not doing what they want that government to do, right? So the WEF wants the Republic of Georgia to join NATO, so they're having a color revolution because the government said, fuck no, we don't want anything to do with those assholes. Anyway, sort of the same conditions exist in South Korea at the moment. We've got the Mother Weffers agitating a base level of the South Korean population to go against government policy. They're not really against the government. They just don't want the government to do specific things. Anyway, so we're really shaping up to melee, and we've got our space alien invasion. So just over these last couple of days, we've had mass sightings and mass videos come out of Portugal of 3 or 4 separate incidences where we've had UFOs over soccer games. There was a bunch of UFOs that were doing a sort of like a maneuver. I mean, it was like an organized maneuver kind of thing, and they were doing it over Lisbon, and they were photographed. We've had orbs over the UK. We've had tons of drones in the UK. And now these are really interesting drones. So I got to get into that for a minute. But we've also had UFOs over Texas this morning being reported by commercial and military pilots, and they are the UFOs are doing maneuvers over Texas, right? They're coming together, they're doing specific things. It almost looks like a training exercise kind of a deal, right? Anyway, over the UK, and I guess it's now over the same over some places, some military bases in the US, there are these drones. And when we say drones now, we're not talking like the drones you'd get off of Amazon or something, right? We're talking about things that they're saying are described as bigger than SUVs, all right? They have multiple lights. They've got no apparent propulsion system. It's not like they've got the little propellers on them and all of that kind of shit. No apparent propulsion. And they've been up in the air for 5 days over some of these bases in England. Okay, and so there's no drone we have, even with solar panels built into it, that can stay aloft for 5 days. Obviously, as soon as the sun goes down, they're going to start tapping into battery power. They'll be exhausted before the end of that first night, and we'll have landed. So some shit's going on there, and it's very likely alien drones or breakaway civilization drones. Okay, I actually think it's more probable than it's if it is acting in its own interest legitimately. It's more probable it's aliens. It may be the breakaway civilization doing a maneuver for a psyop, kind of a deal, right? At this point, we can't determine, but they're there, and everybody's afraid to shoot at them. Okay, so the word has gone out to all the military in the UK, don't shoot these fuckers. And they're saying, oh, well, we don't want to shoot them because we don't want them falling on civilians, which is pretty logical, really. You don't want a bunch of SUV-sized drones, and who knows how much they weigh, falling out of the sky on civilian houses and shit, right? But so there is all of the action. There is now all of the actions that we can characterize as an invasion. So I'm quite comfortable in saying, okay, we've met the conditions for the invasion, and we're starting to get the setup for the melee, where everybody's fighting everybody, and the chaos everywhere kind of thing, right? And that will include the space aliens and the breakaway civilization, as well as a bunch of us guys settling all of our shit down here. It's gonna be a fun damn December, let me tell you. It's already started off really great. So, just a couple of quick notes here on something else, a little diversion here. I'm going to go and talk with American Journal, Harrison Smith on InfoWars here on Thursday. I don't know when they'll air it, but we're recording Thursday morning. We haven't set the time yet. I've had maybe a dozen interview requests. I just can't accommodate it, guys. My wife is in a very delicate situation at the moment, and is many hours away from me. She has medical needs, and I just am not available to do all these damn interviews, okay? And plus, I get really bored saying the same shit over and over again. So most of them I'm probably not going to even think about accepting. Sorry, it's just the way it is. I just don't have a whole lot of time. I'm going to probably end up spending about 5 hours today working hardware issues if it goes well. And I'm not suspecting it's going to go well, because I was looking at some of those drives and some of this gear I've got here, and it's over 40 years old. So it's going to be difficult to get this thing kludged together to the point where it functions. I may end up having to, scrap it all and decide to either abandon all of this kind of shit, or, which may be very pertinent because of the invasion and shit going on, or to, buy a whole new drive array kind of thing. And those fuckers are expensive. I mean, I can put, it would take probably a good chunk of a Bitcoin to replicate what I've got here. I grew it over time, so it was not like I laid out that kind of money initially. But there's tens of thousands of dollars in these in this hardware, and it really is distressing to me because the amount of salt in the air out here is just corroding the fuck out of everything. Okay, so I'm going to go on InfoWars, American Journal, recording Thursday, unknown airtime. Talking about, the process and the data, that kind of shit, right? And then tomorrow, on the 4th, I'm going to do a segment on Beyond Mystic, on Rumble and X and all of that, with Jordan Sather and JC, and we're going to talk about the Blue Chicken Cult and fighting the Blue Chicken Cult. And it's sort of humorous. I'm just sort of playing off of that as though we're being invaded by blue chickens, which I am quite certain that's not the case. There's none of these, Corey Good blue avian fuckers, because, hey, that's his intellectual property, right? Anyway, so, and fair use and commentary using the name Blue Avians, right? Anyway, so just to get that out there, and also, hey Corey, if you sue me again, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you again. Your attorney is I have a dog that is legally smart, that is smarter in a legal fashion than your attorney. My dog would make less mistakes than your attorney does. Anyway, so okay, so I'm expecting that the data will play out as we had originally thought in that first interpretation when I was sitting there with Igor and we were having some coffee and looking at this goofy shit, with the melee stuff coming after or during the process of an invasion. Now, it's not, people are misunderstanding, okay? There will be UFOs shooting at UFOs, but from our viewpoint down here, that's what it looks like. What it's really is, and we can't tell the difference from down here, is alien reproduction vehicles built and owned by corporations, which we call the breakaway civilization. Those guys fighting against aliens, okay? It's not in the interest of the breakaway civilization to allow alien contact with the general population. In fact, it totally defeats their driving vision, all right? And so they will not want this to occur. And so I suspect that they will be agent provocateurs and attempt to cause disruption in basic warfare, active kinetic confrontation and contention between the aliens and the humans. So we'll see how that plays out. Just bear in mind, just because one UFO shoots at another UFO does not mean that it's two different groups of aliens shooting at each other, right? Anyway, so this could be really interesting. The melee stuff, I expect that that they'll get things together in South Korea and lock it all down after a very violent period of time. I suspect that the burbling color revolution in Georgia is going to fail. And it's going to fail very miserably for the Elohim worship cult, and some of the WEF will be caught. Okay, so so we have data showing that some of the mother WEFers are going to have to be ransomed from being captured. So they'll be where they should not be, attempting to direct actions that they supposedly have no hand in, and they will be captured. And then the other mother WEFers they'll have a real shit fit and will have to negotiate all kinds of concessions to get these mother weffers back, right? And so it's going to be really interesting that way. I suspect that occurs in the middle of the melee, and we probably won't really hear about it until later. So there's going to be a lot of this melee shit that goes on, and it'll take us maybe months to learn about all of the details of what's happening. I suspect that this will be more towards January 15th through February 15th, or January 15th through March 15th, in that kind of a time frame, than in these early days of it. But in the early days of the of contact, and that's what this is. Okay, so a lot of people are saying invasion, and I use that word too, just because it's fun and it gets everybody whipped up. But what really is happening here is this is official contact. Okay, these visitors, these beings from otherwhere, people from another planet kind of thing, want to have a discourse. They have needs that they must express to us about our bad behavior affecting them. And they would like us to address this bad behavior and other stuff, right? They'd like to get to know us because we're kind of cool and creative and fun and all of that kind of stuff, right? Unpredictable. We're actually quite unique as a pointed, focused aspect of the ontology. Humans have a certain cachet. We're cool. So these guys want to come and talk to us. We're the cool kids on the block. We just don't know it yet. That, I think, is, like I say, that aspect of it, the contact aspect of it, will be happening here in December and all through this melee period. So if we look at the data as it laid out in 2009, and then we had a big tranche of the stuff come in 2012, 13, and 14. So over a course of 2 years there, this data set really grew. It stabilized a whole lot in 2015, as though it was like like Universe had said, oh, okay, that's all you really need to know now. And it was pretty stable and held there until we get into the Trump interview period, right? Anyway, so what I'm suspecting is going to happen here is that the data said that there would be contact, and then, in a sense, round contact, swirling around contact, would be the melee. All right, would be the quote invasion, which is how that's going to be characterized by mainstream media and these kind of fuckers, and the fighting with the alien reproduction vehicles leading into this period of melee. So the data was basically saying all throughout these months, from some point, there's going to be contact. So while all of this shit's going on, we can expect that these space aliens are going to have provable, not just someone saying, oh, they came down and talked to me. No, bullshit, dude. Video that, has no AI component required, receipts required, because there will be contact. They're not going to go through officialdom. All right, so I think that decision has already been made, that our officialdom is just too fucked up to deal with. And so contact is going to come out in a different fashion. I suspect from the things I've seen in the data that I have some understanding of what may occur, and we can get into that in other discussions. I've got some driving issues here, and I've got to pull over and do some stuff in a few minutes. So I don't want to divert and go into all of that kind of crud, right? Anyway, so we'll undoubtedly talk about some of this stuff with JC and Jordan tomorrow as we get into the stupid/evil machinations of butthead Corey Good and the Blue Chicken Cult, which were really they're a nasty bunch. They're really a nasty crew. I had all kinds of stalker problems from them, assaulted on the beach, all different kinds of shit. I was really irritated. It was very nice for me to see how to game the federal court system and put Corey and his attorney in their place by getting dismissed. And you'll note that I got dismissed out of that case and nobody else did. And so it's not a question of law, and it's not a question of fact and legality as to why these people didn't get kicked out, okay? And I know why they didn't get kicked out. It's because judges cannot rule on law anymore. They can only rule on public policy matters. So we went from common law through structured law to corporate law to maritime law, which includes corporate law, and then we went into public law, and now we're into public policy law. And no SCOTUS decision prior to 1938 is taken into account in any court in the country. You can bring them up, they'll accept them, you can put them in as evidence. They don't they count on your evidence sheet and your word limits and all that kind of stuff, but the court is simply not going to take them into account because they cannot rule on aspects of law under their circumstances because they're a corporation and they've been told that that's the case, right? And so they just don't do that. All right, so anyway, we'll talk blue chickens tomorrow. I don't have a whole lot of rancor. I don't have a lot of, unresolved feelings or any of that because I won, right? I was successful. So I don't have a whole lot of held over stuff I need to talk about, but there's all kinds of fascinating shit that went down that we've never had a chance to discuss. And so we'll get into that. I don't know what they want to talk about at InfoWars, except I suspect vaguely about my process and people being psychic and the space alien invasion, right? Now, invasion word aside, so I'm not trying to create the connotation of, space alien paratroopers falling out of the sky, right? Nor thousands of little UFOs attacking us. So nothing at all like Independence Day, okay? So it's not like that. What we're actually entering into, I'm using the invasion word because that's going to be every fucking place over these next 30 days in social media. But really, it's contact, okay? It's a very gentle contact. It's contact with people, us guys, who have been very abusive to them and have caused them all kinds of problems and have been really stupid about shit. And, so under those circumstances, contact has to be handled in a particular way because humans are dangerous motherfuckers and can cause real problems. So I think we're being treated with a very delicate and gentle touch, and I'm sure hoping that government doesn't go on and continue to fuck things up. I know that so the data suggested that there were governments on the planet that didn't buy into the mother weffers approach of, shoot first and hijack the technology, right? There are governments, I'm not going to name them, but you'll see them. They'll be publicly, they'll be doing things in a public fashion that will bring them to your attention if you follow social media as we go through this month leading into the melee period. Those governments will be successfully contacted. Those governments will not, in my opinion, include the 5 Western liberal republics, English-speaking guys. So it won't be the UK. It's not going to be the US or Canada, New Zealand, or Australia. Those governments are going to be antagonistic and shoot. If they're not initially, there will be attempts by the breakaway civilization to cause these issues. So the breakaway civilization may come and attack U.S. military bases in their UFOs in order to make us think that the UFO invasion is undergoing, and we're being fiercely attacked by Draco reptilians or some damn shit. So, which, the whole reptilian thing, it's a fantasy, it's not real. Anyway, so So that'll be occurring over these next 30 or so days. We'll get into melee, where this shit will pop out, and then that melee period will continue for some period of time. There will be a period of unknowing. During that period of unknowing is also all this unknowing about all the financial shit. So I'm expecting, major banks to fail real soon, and I'm also expecting officialdom to have to do things relative to the economy, like freezing price controls, that sort of thing. I don't think they'll do that, but I mean some, officialdom kind of an action that they try and spread across the whole economy to try and keep things stable during this period of time. And at some point, but it'll probably be after the Trump return, and so it'll probably actually be after mid-February, I suspect that we'll start seeing economic moves announced and so forth with and proffered with the explanation that these measures are being taken in order to deal with the space alien invasion. So officialdom sometime after February should be referencing our unfolding reality in much more clear and also much more factual terms. They'll call it invasion. It won't be that. But nonetheless, they'll at least be talking about the shit going on over our heads. Also, I suspect that we're going to run into a big issue with chemtrails. So, I'm reluctant to file the fucking lawsuit because I don't want to spend, the next 10 or 15 years in court. It'd be a fun kind of a contention. It would be interesting. I'd be interested to see how much damage I could cause to officialdom and hundreds of officialdom lawyers with just me and a couple of AI, right? So that would be real interesting. I'm reluctant to file it, though, because there's going to be all this interesting shit going on, including the space aliens and stuff, and I've got other things to do. I don't want to be sucked into that. Now, I'm looking at RFK Jr. saying he's going to take the chemicals out of chemtrails. Basically, he's saying there's a method, and it is true, there's a method whereby they can do weather modification all to hell and gone. We don't have to upset those corporations, but they don't have to use the chemicals. They don't have to use the fly ash. They can just actually use water. But in any event, so RFK wants to take the chemtrail or the chemicals out of chemtrails, and so if he did that, hey, there's no point for me to suing, right? And also, I've got data sets that really suggest that there's going to be egg on a whole lot of people's faces, and they'll stop doing the chemtrails because of the invasion, okay? Or because of the contact, because of the UFOs that are here. I'm not going to go into that. I've only got a few more miles here, and I've got to do stuff. But so I suspect that chemtrails may be a self-curing problem, right? In the sense that circumstances are going to do things to make it not a viable operation. And so you can see that I mean, the data set's been saying this for some time. It makes sense if you look at it from the idea that there's all kinds of whizzing around, various different kinds of UFOs, jets, all kind of activity in the skies. You're not going to want to be doing your weather modification then, right? You're not going to even think about doing that if you've got to dodge the UFOs. You may be shot out of the sky by an errant missile, all of this kind of thing. So we may find that we end up with clean skies just because the UFOs want to talk to us. And just because the breakaway civilization is desperate to prevent that. And so we'll see. All of this stuff is possible, but unlikely until it actually shows up. So none of the things I'm talking about, other than the fact that I've got a decent history in prognostication, is probable. Okay, so I have that basis, but any of these individual elements has no temporal support for it unless we point it out as we go along. So, that being said, we're in for some major changes over this month and into next year. This is going to be a very exciting month. Lots of UFO activity and lots of humans getting all whipped up, and maybe more revolutions, maybe more governments falling, who the hell knows. Economy is going to get this shit kicked out of it. Maybe all of the banks will be forced to declare and acknowledge, if not account for, their unrealized losses as these derivative layers fail. And maybe, this is one of the things I've been thinking about, is that maybe this attempt by the mother weffers and Obama, he's involved in that, to engineer the Georgia color revolution will bring down the derivatives on the bonds that are so heavily sold into all of these Eastern European republics back during the Obama period of time. And so you can see, if we get into a particular level of upset and so on, that people will not have a lot of confidence in these derivatives and even deep, or deep asset bonds being able to hold value or to be able to be recovered for that value. And so they may start selling them off. They may create a cascade rush to get out of these derivatives and bonds. I don't know, but the derivative layers go down. And I'm of the opinion at this stage that that's going to take out a lot of these very shaky banks with their unrealized losses, because they will have to accept the actual losses that will occur as these two. It's three derivative layers. Those fuckers are complex. I've looked into them. I'm not going to try and detail out a lot of this shit. But basically, you've got derivatives that are based on other derivatives, and three of these layers are going down. We'll see. Again, possible, but unlikely until it actually shows up. Now, it's actually quite probable that we're in a state of extreme financial distress, and that there's people that are sweating bullets and, chewing their fingernails off trying to keep all this shit together in the background. We can see that aspect of things. Anyway, guys, okay, so I'm here now. I've got to go and do work.